I remember how many times I almost gave up on being a nurse. Now I'm like, I did that. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is T. I am a nurse and a content creator. I just felt like it was so much more easier for me to come on here and give you guys the whole rundown if you want to become a travel nurse, and to talk about my personal journey as a nurse. I've been getting a lot of questions on TikTok. How do you become a travel nurse? What was the process like? How long do you have to be a nurse before you start doing travel contract? What is the process like to transition from being a Canadian nurse to a US nurse? So let's start from the beginning. Like I said, my name is T. I am a med-surg nurse and a tele nurse. First of all, to be a travel nurse, let's break it down very simply. You have to be a nurse. You have to be a nurse at first. So I first went to college, got my associate degree or my nursing diploma. I studied in French. I'm from Quebec. We have what we call CGF or college, and it's 3 years. The whole program to become a nurse is 3 years. Once you're done with that, you can go to university for an additional 2 years to get your BSN. If you did the 3 years in college, you only have to do an additional 2 years to get your BSN. So when I did my 3 years degree, I took my boards. We have what we call the OIIQ, which is essentially the same thing as the NCLEX, but we in Quebec like to do things differently. So we have the OIIQ exam, which is our board for nurses here in Quebec. I took the exam, passed it. So I then became a nurse. When I first started, I went straight to med-surg and I never ever left med-surg. I almost did. I actually did for like a month. When I did my clinicals in university for my BSN, I did my clinicals in the ICU. I love the ICU, and I also love everything that is heart related. So I decided to take a position in the CV ICU. But when I decided to start doing travel nursing, they wanted you to be in the specialty you've been practicing in the most, which for me was med-surg. So I essentially had to go back to med-surg. So bottom line, I'm a med-surg nurse. I've always been a med-surg nurse. When I started working as a nurse, I really thought like I was gonna get the bag. At least that's how they made it seem in school. That nurses, we make money. And when I got my first paycheck, I almost fainted. I was baffled. I remember I was telling my mom and my dad, like, when I get my first paycheck, I'm taking y'all out. I'm gonna take y'all to the spa and whatever. Believe it or not, after the taxes, I believe I had like something like $500 for like a whole week, because I was getting paid $23 an hour. I couldn't believe it. And when I finished my BSN, I believe I was getting like $27 an hour, which was still not enough for me, because I was like, there's no way I went to school for 3 years to be making $27 an hour. So that's when I decided to be like, okay, I need to find a solution. And my solution was to do travel nursing. So while I was working as a staff nurse in the public system, I decided to start my process to become a travel nurse in the US. It takes a minute, but if you are somebody that's really consistent and somebody that's really serious about things, you can actually get that done within 6 months. Because I got my whole process done within 6 months, because I was really ready to go. I was minded that I didn't want to be stuck in the public system anymore. So I was like, yeah, I need something better for myself. The first step is that you need to know where you want to apply. So as a Canadian, because we are not US citizens, we have to know where we want to apply, because we legally cannot have what they call a compact license. A compact license essentially is one license that allows you to practice in several states at the same time. So you don't have to have several licenses to work in different states. But as a Canadian, unfortunately, we don't qualify for it. So you will have to have a license for each and every state you want to work in. So the first thing is to obviously know where would be the first state that you would want to work in. Keep in mind that the first state you apply for does not have to be the state where you're actually going to be working. I'm gonna give you guys an example. I wanted something that was quick. So for me, I wanted to apply with a state that would give me my license quickly, and eventually my plan was to take that license and endorse somewhere else. I'm gonna explain it to you guys and it's gonna make more sense. I decided to apply for the Minnesota Board of Nursing because they're very quick. I've heard great things about it, and they're used to working with Canadians. So number one, decide where you want to apply. So I applied for the Minnesota Board of Nursing. The Minnesota Board of Nursing, their requirements are straightforward. If you've studied in French like me, you do have to write an English exam, which is either the TOEFL or the IELTS, something like that. It's one of the two, basically just to prove that you are functional in English. It's not too hard of an exam, very simple task that they ask you to do. Minimal study will get you through it. They ask for your school to send a copy of your transcript, or they have a form that your school can actually fill out and send back to them to confirm that you've completed your studies and that you've passed. they require a background check, and they will also ask you to request for a copy or proof of current license to be sent to them. I'm licensed here in my province, so I had to request for them to send a copy of my license to the Minnesota Board of Nursing so they can be like, okay, she's actually really a nurse. And keep in mind that all the documentation that you're sending to them, you are not actually the one sending them. The board or your school has to send them to the Board of Nursing because they want to make sure they're authentic documents and that you didn't falsify them. If you try to send them on your own, they will refuse the documents and you will have to have your school or the board send them over. After everything has been sent to the Board of Nursing, before they start processing your application, all the documents have to be received. Once you've sent all the documentation, background check, for the background check, you will have to get some fingerprints done, mail it to the address that they will provide to you, and they'll process that for you. So once everything is done, so all the steps are completed, the board sent the copy of your license, your school sent a copy of your transcript, background check was successfully done and cleared, and you've passed the English exam, the board will send you what they call an ATT, which is your authorization to test for the NCLEX, and you will be able to register for the NCLEX at that time. You can't just register for the NCLEX. That's not how it works. You have to apply through a board, and the board in question will give you the permission to sit for the NCLEX. I get the same question often. Where do I register for the NCLEX? Can't do that. You have to apply through a board, and the board has to give you permission to sit for the NCLEX. Every state have their own requirements. So for example, New York's requirements will be different than Minnesota's requirements. So it really depends where you're going, but I'm making this video explaining my process through the Minnesota Board of Nursing. But again, each state is different and will be different. Once I got my ATT, I was ready to test and I started studying for my NCLEX. So I did study for my NCLEX, passed my NCLEX. Now I'm officially licensed in the US. It doesn't stop there because remember, I'm Canadian. I did have a nursing license at the point to practice in the US, but in order for you to work legally in the US, you have to have what we call a visa. For us nurses, RNs, you will have what they call a TN visa, and this is what will give you permission to work in the US legally. The first application is the longest one because you'll have to put all your documentations together. So the second thing you're going to want to do is create an account with the CGFNS. I know there's a lot of organization that does what the CGFNS does, but personally, I've used the CGFNS. I've referred a lot of people to the CGFNS and we've all had great experiences, so I'm going to keep recommending them. The CGFNS basically is an organization. To make it very simple for you guys to understand, what they do is that they gather all your documents, so your transcript from school, your ID, your English results, and every documentation that you might need for your visa or your nursing application. They take everything and send it to whoever needs it. So it could be for the Board of Nursing or it could be for your visa application. So for the visa part of your application, you will need what they call a visa screen. All that it does basically, it's a certificate that compares your education from Canada to a US nurse, and it's telling the border or whoever requires it that your education level is similar or the same as an RN in the United States of America and that you are good to practice as an RN. So they will take that report and send it to whoever needs it. You can also from the CGFNS order what they call a CES report, which is simply a credential evaluation report that can be sent to the Board of Nursing. But for your visa application, because remember at this point I already got my RN license in Minnesota, and now my second thing is that I want to get my visa so I can go and work in the US. So what I did is that I purchased their visa screen service. They asked me to send some documentation, so ID, transcript that my school sent to them. I had to send them my English exam results as well as the proof of my current license in Canada. So they put everything together and issued a visa screen form that they sent to me, and then I took the form and put all my documentation together, and the day that I was ready to go at the border, I had to present that to the agent at the border. Once I got the visa screen, then you go to the border to apply for it. They will issue you a visa and they'll stamp it in your passport, and then you'll be able to work in the US. Keep in mind that before you even go to the border, once they send you the visa screen, which is the paper saying that you are who you say you are, they compared your education and everything is good, they'll send that to your house. Make sure you start signing up with agencies, because yes, you're good to work, you have all that it takes, you have a license and everything is good to go, but you have to find a job before you even go to the border, because the paper is not your actual visa. The paper is just saying that you are a nurse and that they did what they had to do. So once you go to the border, that's when you actually get the visa. But in order for you to get the visa, you have to have a job. You can't just show up at the border and be like, I have an RN license and my visa screen, like I'm trying to get in on their visa. No, you have to have a job. You have to show the border agent that you have a letter from the agency that's going to hire you saying that you're going to be working and this and that. So once you have your visa screen, or in the process of getting your visa screen, you can start signing up with agencies and start looking for a job. Once you start looking for a job, once you find a job, you are going to ask your agency to give you a letter for the border, because you're a Canadian and you need to have a visa, and they're going to ask you questions. Where are you going? Where are you coming for? How much are you going to be making? Where are you going to be staying? So those kind of things, you need to have the information that they need to have in order to let you in the country. So once you have everything, you got the job, you got the letter, the offer letter with all the information that they need, you show up at the border, they will stamp your passport. I believe at the time when I applied for my visa, it was like $50 at the border, but the actual visa screen was almost like $1,000 Canadian. Let's say you're at the border, you got the job and everything. I always say to everybody, the day that you go to the border to apply for your visa, it's actually the day usually that you're going to be on your way to your contract. Please stop at the Social Security Administration office and get your social security number, because as a Canadian, you don't have a US SSN, which is a social security number. You will have to apply for it. And a lot of jobs will give you a hard time if you don't have a SSN, or they will be like, okay, we're giving you 30 days to get it. You know, if not, you can have the job or keep the job. So me, when I first did my first contract, I was actually driving to Houston, Texas. What I did is that on the way, once I passed the border, got my TN and everything, I stopped at the Social Security office, applied for my SSN. I gave them the address where I was going to be staying in Houston, Texas. They sent the SSN to my address, and once I got it, I provided it to my job so that they don't cancel my contract or anything like that. You're probably asking yourself, like, you said you got a license in Minnesota. How did you end up in Houston, Texas? So let's go back to it. What I was trying to tell you guys earlier, remember I was saying that you cannot, as a Canadian, practice with one license in multiple states. For me, I knew the Board of Minnesota was very quick with their applications and their processing time. What I decided to do was to apply with them. Then once I got my Minnesota license, I decided to immediately endorse in Texas. So they're basically taking my Minnesota license and be like, okay, she's already a RN, she's already licensed here, we're just gonna give her license in Texas because she's already licensed in another state. So it's by reciprocity. They're basically just taking my initial license and giving me the right to practice in their state after reviewing the initial license. As long as you have your initial license or an active license, they will endorse it by what they call endorsement. So they will endorse the first license or the license that you already have. Because for you to have an initial license, it tells them that you already took the NCLEX. So once I endorsed in Texas, I was issued a license and I was able to apply for jobs in Texas. I already knew going for my Minnesota license that I was not going to work in Minnesota and probably will never. But other than that, like, my goal was never to really work in Minnesota. I just wanted to be strategic about it. So I applied for my Minnesota license and I ended up endorsing in Texas, New York, and all the other states that I wanted to work in. So once I got in Houston, Texas, it took about 12 days for my SSN to come in the mail. Once I got it, I did provide it to the hospital where I was working at the time. You might have a harder time finding your very first contract in the US as a first-time Canadian in the US, because it's so much easier for them to just hire a US educated nurse. So why would they even go with a Canadian nurse? But trust me, you just have to be patient. You will find a hospital that will work with you. I mean, you're not the first travel nurse, you're not the last travel nurse, and you're probably not the first Canadian. So don't give up. Even if your first contract is kind of harder to find, after your first contract, it will be so much easier for you to find contracts because you'll already have the experience. You'll be used with their charting system and everything. Another question that I get often, a lot of people are asking me, T, should I do my ACLS, my BLS, my NIHSS before I leave, or just wait until you get there? I would 100% tell you guys to wait until you get there, because most of the time the hospitals will require you to do them with the Hearts Association in the United States, and if you did it in Canada, it might not even be good for them, so you might have to redo them. So definitely wait until you get there to do them, or if you can do them online, make sure it is AHA approved, or the training cards whatsoever are provided by the American Heart Association. As far as the NIHSS, usually they'll take any provider. I've never had an issue where they tell me, hey, like, we specifically require it from the specific provider, because it's always the same questions and it goes back to the same thing, so you should be good with that. Another great question that I get about being a travel nurse is, how often do you get paid? How do you find housing? Are you not scared? Do you not feel lonely? How do you travel? So I'm gonna answer those questions as well. As far as housing, first of all, we get paid every week. Every Friday we get paid. So that's the great thing about being a travel nurse. You don't have to worry about waiting every 2 weeks. I don't remember when's the last time I got paid every 2 weeks. I could never go back to getting paid every 2 weeks. Number two, housing. There's several ways you can go about housing. You could do Airbnb. You can use what we have that's very popular for travel nurses, Furnish Finder. It's basically like Airbnb but for travel nurses, and it's really great because a lot of times the hosts are actually nurses or travel nurses, which is great. I was lucky. My second contract, I actually found a nurse on a travel nurse group. She was actually getting ready to go and work a contract in California, and she had her house in New York that was like gotta be empty, so she literally rented me her house for like the low, and it just worked out very nicely because she was in California, I was in New York, I was renting her house, and she kept extending her contract, so I just had the house for the whole time, which was great. I ended up not liking the contract, so I left. She was very flexible with that too. The thing is that when you do Airbnb, you just have to make sure that the terms and conditions are kind of like more on the flexible side, because you don't want to just pay upfront and have a non-refundable policy, because then what happens if you get canceled on your contract, or if you don't like the contract, then you're kind of stuck, you're out of your money, and it's just like not cool for you. As far as security, so for me, it doesn't matter where I go, I always kind of look where I'm going, the area, and make sure that it's like kind of, I'm not gonna stay in a ghetto, like I want to stay where it's safe, and at the end of the day, there's no amount of money that would make me want to risk my life. So I always make sure that I know where I'm going and that I've made my research on the area, and if I don't feel like it's a safe area, I'm probably not even going to take the contract, because it's not worth your safety at all, and it'll never be worth your safety. When I was in college, I had a teacher that actually told me that I would never be a nurse, and I'm so glad I kept pushing and I did not let her determine what my future was going to look like. Bottom line is, don't let people take your future away from you, because what's in you can nobody take that away from you. Telling myself, if I would have listened to that lady, I would have probably never been a nurse today. I can't believe she actually made me feel like I would never be a nurse, and I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one who went through this. If I would have let her take my dream away from me, I would have probably regretted it so bad today. That's why I keep telling people, when people are trying to stop you from getting where you're trying to go, please don't listen to them, because at the end of the day, nobody has the right to steal your future from you. Don't let people or one person be the determining factor of your future. I remember how many times I came home crying to my parents, like, I don't want to do this anymore. I was like, yeah, that's too much for me. It's too much stress. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, comment, like, and subscribe, and I will see you guys with more. If you guys have any questions, anything that you guys want to discuss, make sure to comment down below, and I will make sure to come back with another one for you guys, and I hope to see you guys very soon. Bye.